Welcome to The Vietnamese. I'm your host, Kenneth Nguyen. Being part of a culture of nearly 100 million Vietnamese people in the world today comes with a lot of pain, proud history, and privilege. Join me as I highlight and explore the Vietnamese experience from all over the world. Hey everyone, today I'm talking about Tran, director of Paper Tigers. It's a new action comedy movie out now in theaters across the US and streaming video on demand platforms. Bao and I talk about the making of Paper Tigers and the long road that went into getting the movie made. So please join us.
Hey man, how are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm good. So how did your family end up in Olympia, Washington?
Well, yeah, my parents and my brother and sister, they left Vietnam after the war. So after kind of shortly after the fall of Saigon, and they were part of that old people generation. And they came to Thailand as a way of as their first stop out of Vietnam. And I think it came down to two sponsors. It was two of my uncles. One was in Olympia, the other Olympia, Washington. The other was in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And so I think we ended up going to the right uncle. I don't know if that's the right good way to say it, but I think we kind of lucked out. So we went to Olympia, Washington, and stayed and sponsored with my uncle and his family there.
Why do you think they went to Olympia?
I don't know. I think it might be. I don't know. That's a good question. I think it was partly because maybe it was maybe closer. I guess somehow I don't know if it was like an easier geographical touch, but maybe there was just kind of an easier thing where I think it could have been also my uncle was there a little bit longer than my other uncle in Oklahoma, so that like settled and things were a little bit more secure, and to help welcome to the new country. They knew the processing more when that's a good question. I should ask about that.
What was it like?
So, you know how there's all those gaps and those things, like you kind of know the upper thing, but then you don't really know the actual like little motive things. It's funny.
Yeah, that's the thing about like these podcasts now. It's like we're able to sort of sit down and take a minute to kind of reflect on the reasons why our parents or grandparents did certain things, and historically why things were the way they become, we can sit and breathe and take time to kind of explore these things. What was it like for you growing up?
Fond memories. Yeah, I think everything I have was just happy. Really, it was a small town. And Olympia was it was the capital of the state, but it's kind of a small town and pretty close knit. So a lot of the Vietnamese community really was, the center of activity and stuff like that, Vietnamese American activity, and whatnot. And at that time, it's also the kind of like things were more open and less like closed off. And I just remember the story of we would often drive up to Seattle, which is the bigger town and has a Chinatown, and you can get like probably better ingredients for Vietnamese food or Asian food and whatnot. And but at that time you had a phone book to get directions. It's not like you had GPS or anything. Trying to explain to the young ones out there, but my parents, I guess sometimes we'd get lost, and they'd go to the gas station phone booth and they'd look up a Nguyen or a Tran or just some name to like help ask for directions. So they just call them randomly up, saying, "I'm lost, can you help me?" And then they would say, "What are you trying to do? Where are you going?" It's like, "Why don't you come over? We're having pho," or whatever. Because it was just like that really just kind of like intimate connection. So I really, had that. I don't remember going over, but I just remember my parents saying like they were welcome, like even just random phone calls. People, were maybe so in need of community and connection with other Vietnamese, Americans, and even at that time things were safer. You left your doors unlocked, so it's part of that whole kind of like different time. So it's just like a really sweet togetherness, community. There would be all these, and then there's a Vietnamese school that I remember kind of ducking out. My dad was like the principal, so I was like kind of ducking out on a lot of stuff. So yeah, just a really fun memories with that community, but also kind of growing up, I guess, in the American world, because it was still a small town and things were pretty close knit and low key already. So
yeah, what can you go into what you were saying about your father being the principal of this Vietnamese school?
Yeah, well, my father was a teacher in Vietnam. Like he taught English in high school, um and so when he came to Olympia, him and several other, because this generation, that generation tend to be academics for a certain type of social order. So they all kind of gathered together and started like a Vietnamese community school. Vietnamese, first of all, a Vietnamese community, but also focused on having a Vietnamese language school. So they were on Friday nights, and all the kids in the community, had different classes, and everyone was volunteering and um, teaching Vietnamese class. So that was kind of an interesting experience with me and my peers, and that's how I kind of made friends. There's quite a lot of people out of Olympia that for some reason kind of reached notoriety in different things. So it's a funny thing, kind of looking back and watching everybody kind of grow into their own strength. But I think it's a huge influence from just that small
Wow.
Vietnamese community. So,
Can you name a few of the people that came out of that time era?
yeah, I mean, we have me, obviously. Yeah. But
I love your humor,
yeah, I'm
man.
speaking broad.
Always love your humor.
I'm-
I've always it. We'll get into that too. I find it always fascinating to hear you talk.
um, yeah, so not just the specific Vietnamese school, but even my producer, Alan Duong, was from the Olympia. I was Catholic and he's Buddhist, so we maybe had kind of different circles, but still like the temple and the church communities, still had some interaction. So he came out of that. And I believe Tai Nguyen,
The rapper.
the fashion designer,
Oh,
no, this fashion designer, yeah, came out of that community as well. And Tan Tan is another writer, journalist, podcaster, and she came out of the environment as well. So it's like kind of at least counting four of us, and I'm sure there's a couple others that we don't know of. But it's just funny for all to kind of like realize we came from this small space. So like just to underline the point, like Olympia was a small town, right? There wasn't
yeah.
like that much going on.
Yeah, and four very notable people I know of, every person, and it shows how important sort of like community is, right? Like you get these people who have these like-minded interests in culture, and you get them together, and they produce these people that go on to further the sort of like the ideas of their own culture and community.
Yeah. Yeah, and come to think of it, even when I moved to Seattle, there were still events in Olympia that were going on, and then I make the drive. It's about an hour away, and just kind of going back and attend the events or something, or my parents or family, we go back and attend certain events, even when we've moved, like 10, 20, 35 years ago, So that's I guess it's fond memories for everyone, and just the friendships that were made, even though they've all moved. Some of them have moved to San Jose, some of them moved to warmer climates. So it's another thing when you kind of step down just because that was your first either sponsor opportunity, but it wasn't necessarily your city of choice, right? So I think when they establish themselves, then they find a way to go to warmer climates, and where they can actually be, have a choice or say in how they want to live and where they want to live.
So when you're a kid, right, do you sort of see the world in terms of film or arts? Where did you get the inspiration to take the journey of becoming a filmmaker?
That was a bit a long and winding road, but I guess I say I'm a late bloomer because I didn't really get into really want to make films till I was like 12. But like, when I hear stories of Spielberg, I hear like 6 and 5. I'm like, oh my gosh, they really got into it early. So
But 12 is pretty damn early, man. 12 is early.
yeah. Looking back for sure. Yeah, but even just growing up, from let's say from up to the age of 12, I was always just a fan. We'd go and rent videotapes from Chinatown, those whole stacks of, you would call them like TV serials of Phim Bo, right, from Hong Kong and TVB, and just like all melodrama, soap operas, action stuff, like wuxia, right? These are all kind of like all the different types of genres, and movies like feature films. And these were all like either subtitled or not subtitled, dubbed into Vietnamese for the most part.
Yeah.
And at that time, it was just kind of like getting all that as like your direct line to Asian entertainment, right? And then you had your Paris by Nights. So that was definitely part of that as well. Um, and then so a lot of memories kind of sitting at home watching Bruce Lee movies and just all that stuff. But also Bruce Lee was on TV, so that was kind of an interesting intersection of like knowing that, and then you see the English dub version of Bruce Lee on TV, but knowing that he's Asian, so you had kind of this mishmash of
Yeah.
things. And then you go out into the movie theaters, and then I watched, whatever was out there, which was like your big blockbuster, Spielberg and Cameron and all that stuff. So that was kind of like the whole of entertainment for me, just growing up, of getting all those things. But it wasn't until I watched Jackie Chan, like really getting into Jackie Chan, that I wanted to understand filmmaking, because there was just something unique about his style and his rhythm, and there was a musicality to it that was just like so unique. So I wanted to kind of open up the clock and just figure out how the gears worked from that point. But before that, it was really more of a fan and just kind of like taking it all in.
So at 12, what did you do about it? You had this light bulb that goes off, and I want to be a filmmaker, or?
Yeah, it was really that big inflection point. It wasn't a gradual thing. I was like, oh, I'm gonna do this. Like, so I started grabbing my dad's camcorder with this giant, bazooka, VHS style,
Yeah.
and then just figuring out on my own, like even just figuring out how to dub videotapes and kind of connect RCA cables between two VHS decks. I had to figure this all out. This is before YouTube tutorials or anything. In fact, I don't even know how I figured it out. Like I think I just read the in out, and I was just like, I just kept plugging and playing, like, this signal goes in and this one goes out. So then they figure all that, and then push press record, and just kind of like figuring out kind of blindly on that. But yeah, so yeah.
Go ahead.
So in other words, if all the stuff was mostly like oneers, you couldn't really edit that much. There were like several edit points, so it's just like it's all linear editing. That's how I kind of like learned storytelling.
And during this time, you turned 13, 14, 15, and you're telling your parents like you want to do this, right? What do they say?
No, I didn't. I did. I knew it was kind of like, okay, this is kind of like a bit of a forbidden fruit here. But for me, I was like almost like doing this parallel life, instead of kids sneaking out and doing drugs or hanging out with girls, I was sneaking out and making movies.
Wow.
So I was like, I was trying to keep my GPA up, try to like keep schooling, and try to keep like everything look like it, but then, like I was still like underneath the textbook was like all my shot lists, and just trying to plan like the shoots of my friends, and so I understand that double life. It's an interesting, I'm not, I wouldn't dare to like associate, but I understand the idea of coming out, because it's just like that kind of like dual identity, and just kind of like the things you want versus the things that you're expected of doing. And so I have empathetic feelings around that. So yeah, so I didn't, it wasn't until college, and we maybe we can get to that when we get there, but it's like it wasn't until college that I really told my parents that I wanted to make films, because I was already doing it for so many years at that point. So I had a bit of a confidence. So
What did they expect you to do?
I don't know if they expected me to do anything, but obviously it was kind of like, your doctor, lawyer. I think they want to be a doctor or priest, or anything like that had like all those kind of like noble noble professions. Who would want to be an artist, the black sheep? Because we're not an entertainment family. I mean, we watch entertainment, but we don't have like people in showbiz or entertainment, which kind of like makes it more acceptable if you had, someone you could point to. But this was all like, a family that came to survive. And so it's like everything is very blue collar, white collar type of stuff. So it's just not in their framework. And I think that's a big issue for us to unpack, because I feel like that experience a lot with a lot of us Vietnamese in entertainment, or Asian Americans who struggle with parental acceptance and struggle with those things. But you have to kind of understand where the older generation is coming from as well.
Yeah, all of this stuff about representation nowadays in the mainstream here in America, I think that's like a really big topic and a really big issue to fix. But I think addressing the topic within our own families about being able to do these sort of be a part of these industries like the arts, and it starts there first. Like it starts to we need to accept that we are able to become artists and professionals inside the entertainment business. And then from there, that level of representation sort of just starts to grow from that point. I mean, and having that acceptance of our having our family's blessing and not being in the closet, so to speak, is so important for all. I mean, we all share that genetic strain of parents not accepting um their children to go off into the entertainment businesses. So
Yeah.
when you are in college, what did you decide that you wanted to study? What was your double life? What was your shell life?
Computer science.
Hmm.
So every chance I get, I like to tell people I'm a scientist. I did graduate. I barely graduated. It was like, it was coming to a head. College is hard. Like high school, I could kind of like handle it and kind of like BS my way. But college, do a course load.
Yeah.
Especially, I don't, I'm not very math inclined. So I don't. Looking back, I really didn't really understand why I did it. But it was not doctor, right? So I kind of avoided that, but it was acceptable enough. And at that time, there was a whole .com bubble, so it felt sexy enough that, yeah, you're hustling, yeah, you're going into something that could make money. So maybe that was all kind of coming into that. But yeah, I mean, I struggled. It was really difficult. I wasn't mathematically inclined, like I said, and you're being outpaced by Vietnamese who actually could do math. And it's like,
Yeah.
they're ruining the curve for you, and you're like, but yeah, I hustled, man. It was just funny. Even just I still remember like a class assignment and a project that I couldn't figure out and do, and I went to a smaller university, and so I ran over to the bigger university and I went to their tutoring lab, and
Holy
I
shit.
asked how to do the work, and they did the homework for me. So I ran back to that like some. So I was like, yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy.
That's some
But in the
ingenuity,
meantime,
man.
I was
Yeah.
making movies. I know. Looking back, it was like, yeah, I was like, you did what you had to do. It's like you have to get this grade. What are you gonna do? And like, short of cheating, like that was like never an option. But it was just finding ways to like, get it done, and honestly get it off my plate because I was like making short films and movies at night and doing during spring break. I would schedule my whole quarter pre-production planning essentially to have all my friends free and available to shoot on spring break. So
Wow.
I had stuff to do. I don't want to do homework. I don't want to do your project. But yeah, it was hilarious. Like I really like we have a senior project group that was five. You have this small group that you do basically your capstone project, and I still love them to this day because they all understood what I was doing, and I was making probably my biggest short film to date at that senior year. And then they knew I was not I was not meant for this. And
Wow.
then we had our little group had like it was five of us, and there was like four computers, and we were all kind of slacking, I guess. But and then we were threatened by our advisor, like, you guys are gonna fail. Like it's like 4 weeks before graduation. It's like you guys better finish this or you're gonna fail. So it's like kind of all hands on deck, right?
Yeah.
And then like four computers with five of us, and they all like took the computers. Or yeah, that's right. So yeah, they all took the computers, and they were like, and I was like the odd man out, obviously, because I contributed nothing to that project. And they were like, I was like, you guys want coffee? I'll be over here. Don't mind me. And but there was like, burning the midnight oil and just programming and coding, and I had nothing to do. I was just sitting there. Oh man.
Did you take film classes or anything during those years?
Yeah, on the side, like I took, yeah. So at film class, I was self-taught for the most part. My major influence was, Robert Rodriguez, Rebel Without a Crew. That to
Yeah.
me was like one of the most empowering things that like not you don't have to do film school, and that was the way of me making peace of like, I
Not
don't have the money to go to film school, so like, how am I going to do this, right? And then so yeah, I just would read through textbooks and books, and I took film classes, but there weren't production classes. So they were like kind of critical film studies classes, which is cool in its own, but in terms of the gears and actually figuring out, those were a lot of DIY. And for me, like I was fortunately to be mentored by Corey Yuen, who's a family friend. Corey Yuen is like this, legendary Hong Kong film director who directed Jet Li and grew up with Jackie Chan and Sammo Hung and just all those. So, and he became my mentor in the sense that I would make these like short films, these backyard videos, and he'd give me feedback and notes and stuff like that. So that was like my movie school, my film school.
Right. How did you meet him? What do you mean family friend? Like, how did you meet him?
Yeah, so his sons went to my high school. So we were just it just became that connection. And then he was at that time he was coming back to spending more time in America because he was shooting a lot in Hong Kong. But at that time is Jet Li coming over to America. So he followed Jet and during Lethal Weapon. So it's like 96, 97. So at that time it was just almost a perfect opportunity to kind of like grab his ear and like, you know, try to get what I could. So it's like it was amazing.
But at that time, right? So you meet these kids that are, you know, his sons or whatever, right? So you meet these kids and
yeah,
how do you even figure that information out? Like, you're like, they tell you like my dad's this guy, or
no, they didn't have, yeah, they didn't say anything. Yeah, I just heard like, oh yeah, do you know, so and so. There's like they have their dad's like a filmmaker, blah blah blah. It's like, and it didn't really plug together because it's like, it's interesting because they're super low key and you know they're very shy as well. So it's like, and it was just kind of like you kind of heard it in hushed tones, but you didn't put two and two together because no one knew who he was in the sense that like no one knew Hong Kong directors, you know, teenagers didn't know Hong Kong directors. I did, but so I was like, well, so who was it? So and somehow a mutual friend had introduced us, and I figured, you know, we found out. I was like, wow. I was like, holy cow. So yeah, it was cool, and they were super cool, and they just kind of welcomed me into the home and all that. So you know, became great friends, still great friends to this day. But yeah, Corey was just it's incredible, kind of thinking about, you know, the level that he was, and he humored me and looking at my stupid videos. It was just like, oh my god,
yeah, because
that's incredibly generous.
I'm thinking about that first few meetings with somebody that you look up to, or you realize that this is somebody who's really doing the real work in the real world. And then what do you say to him? You say, as a kid, what do you say? Like, hey,
there's nothing to say, because you know what he did? Because like at that time I wanted to make it. I wanted to be like a Jackie Chan, right? I wanted to actually star and direct and all that. And so maybe he thought it was like, okay, this kid like does he think he's talented? So he grabbed like a magazine and holds it up and he's like, I want you to kick this. I was like, what? Like, you want to? Yeah, it was like crazy. That was my first meeting. It wasn't anything like, oh, hello. He's like, he grabs this thing. Because you got to imagine, like, these guys are some badasses, man. They came out of this opera school, which is like, there's no BS. Like, if anyone's seen like Farewell My Concubine or like that type, like, it's like Dickensian. It's like circus training. So you know, he didn't suffer any fools at all. What he just grabs this magazine, I still remember, and he holds it high. I was like, can you bring it down? And he was like, he just held it like so I did like this jump kick and stuff, and he's like, oh, okay, not bad. And then we started talking more. I was like, holy, what a way to get in there.
Yeah, this is exciting. It's exciting to hear that story, because I'm like thinking to myself, if I was like a little kid, what do I tell this older guy who, you know, I've heard about, but what am I going to say? Yo, I want to make a movie, or like I want to get into the business.
Yeah.
How do you have that conversation, right? And you always think so you can kick it. But wait a minute. So that means that you were actually training to become a martial artist like in your early years then, right?
I was, yeah. So that all kind of dovetailed together. Maybe that was at that time I was really interested in what Jackie Chan was doing, because as I was learning, I could kind of start to at least understand like, oh my, like how hard what he does make look easy, right? It's, you appreciate it more once you study the craft or study the martial arts and see it. So yeah, I was doing martial arts, but not out of interest. I was like a couch potato, and my parents kind of pushed me into it. So I didn't really like, you know, get into it as a hobby, and I really loved it. But then I started, you know, falling in love and kind of like practicing it more and more. So yeah, so that at that time I was, you know, I had been practicing for a while. And that's why I was like, you know, filming, you know, myself doing, because no one else could do the martial arts stuff. So I was like doing some of it, and then, but I was really more interested in filmmaking at that time. So actually Corey's best advice to me was like, don't act. He's like, don't act.
Why was that? Why did he say that?
I don't know. I don't think it was a testament, you know, he was, you know, a diss on, you know, my acting abilities. He was just like, it takes too much to focus. If you really want to direct, like you have to be behind the camera and just focus on it. So or maybe that was a gentle like nudge to like maybe you shouldn't do that.
You know, you
But
you
yeah, I mean, I can't do anything that, you know, you see these kids in our movie Marshall Club, like their talent is like, you know, up there. So you find those people that can do
yeah.
that and put them in front of the camera, right? So that he's steering me in that direction. So I think he had acted for a while in the 70s, you know, even probably maybe he, you know, you can find some old fight scenes that he's in, but he never wanted to be in front of the camera.
Right, right. You know, I want to segue real quick. You have a
Yeah.
wicked sense of humor. You know, there's like a really dry, but like, you know, it's bold. It's a daring sense of humor. I've heard you bust out shit throughout the years, and I'm just like, whoa, where do you think that comes from?
Oh, it's funny. I don't know. I think it's just I think it comes from me watching and observing because I like people watching, and I think there's always something funny about how people behave in certain environments and also how I feel in certain environments. And I kind of pay attention to that. I don't know what it is. It's like I just maybe the stuff I watch and see. I love stand up, and I love stand up that has really observational, but also puts them in it.
Yeah,
It's not about like, hey, how about that crazy thing? But like they talk about like Chappelle to me is like, you know, the
yeah,
master storyteller comedian, and he's always in the story, he's always in that moment, so you're always kind of like it's just such, and there's kind of an empathy to it, I guess. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know. I just say things, maybe I say things because I it's the way I
Well,
see it, so
I tell you what, man, I was watching one of
yeah.
your promo videos for you were raising money in 2017, and you're like, oh yeah, I got to do side hustles, right? And then I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I was waiting for the dude, the shit that just happens on the video screen that are the side hustles. It's like hilarious, you know? It's like really funny shit.
Yeah.
Um, you make these you make things that are, you know, it's some serious stuff. That action films are, you know, it's a serious it's serious technical work, but now you're
Yeah.
adding this sort of layer of comedy, levity. You're bringing sort of this lightness to. I think that's a very hard thing to do. um how, you know, how did you kind of come around to understanding like that's sort of like the direction, like Guardians of the Galaxy, for example, like
Mhm.
comes to mind. Technically, looks like a very difficult movie to pull off, but then there's like this thing that takes it to another level, which is the comedy inside of it, right? And that's what
Yeah.
draws me into that kind of. It seems very difficult to do.
Very difficult. Very difficult, but I never felt like it was the thing not to do. You know what I mean? I like I said, I kind of grew up watching all this types of entertainment, and maybe they all kind of blend together. But like Hong Kong movies, obviously, you know, very freewheeling. You know, it just kind of goes. Sometimes it takes like huge left turns, and you know, sometimes it's a little too far. It doesn't work. But there's a certain pitch to it that it always feels like it still feels like the same movie. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
there's just something really alluring to that type of storytelling. And then like you mentioned like Guardians of the Galaxy, and I think today like Taika Waititi is like, you know,
yeah,
a master of that. Like Jojo Rabbit, you know, to me is like this
mhm,
masterpiece of
yeah,
incredibly serious, but wow, just the
yeah,
comic and pathos, just like such a magical touch. Um, but I think it comes from the way maybe you see the world too. And I'm not sure it could be consciously constructed like, okay, now we're going to be funny, or now we're going to be, you know, tragic here and stuff like that. I think um, maybe the most enlightening comment I've heard when people have seen this film, or at least people that know me, they're like, "This movie is you." Like it just has your personality. And
yeah,
people say that
100%.
just that personality comes.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, I never thought of it that way. But it's like, okay, that's cool. Let's, you know, you can follow me, you know, along the ride on that.
I've always had the theory, and I talk about it with my friends in the film community. You know, my close friends. I always say, you know, God, I hate to be so judgmental and judging books by the cover, but you can sort of see what kind of films come out of people if you get to hang out with them.
Mm,
If you spend
mm,
time, a lot of time with a director or a writer, you could see what kind of person that they are. And you know, Stefan Gauger, you know, he was such a beautiful soul. um at the core of who he was, it was like a little boy constantly in wonderment, you know, seeing the world in such an innocent, with an innocent lens. And but there was this sort of other technical side that he understood very well. This there's a gravity to the world that he sees too, but at the core of it, he had this sort of little boy wonder. Yeah, you know, and you could see it, and you could see it in you, you know, that comedy, that there's this seriousness about you when you first meet you, but as you know, you spend time with you, there's this comedic. what what was the short film that you had talked about as you were finishing up your last year in college?
That was Carmen's Virtue, which was the first short that really kind of like I was able to screen, you know, outside of Seattle at film festivals. You know, the other shorts were just more local at festivals and stuff like that. But that one was like accepted into, you know, LA Asian Pacific at that time, you know, VC. And then, you know, I was able to do, you know, a tour in VIF, or Vietnamese Film Festival, you know. So it was almost like you know, coming out in that sense,
Yeah.
that when I waited till like 2-3 weeks before graduation to tell my parents, you know, about it, and put it all on the line and put all the cards on the table. And it was a bit of a shock, obviously, but I just knew that I had a film in my back pocket, and I had acceptance letters to these other film festivals. You know, I don't know if it meant anything.
Can I
Yeah,
stop you right there?
yeah.
Are you telling me like the entire time they had no idea you wanted to be a filmmaker, or this is like something that you're going to do? Like they had no inkling that
No, no.
were you that afraid of them, or
I was
what?
good. I was good. I even had like Corey's family complicit in it. It's like I was like, don't, you know, this is like not a thing. Like, don't say anything like
But what
that.
was
Yeah,
that?
I was like,
Was it more you and your personality, and you just didn't want to disrupt the family environment, or was it like they're that scary and you're just like, fuck it, I don't want to go near that?
I think it came down to like I didn't want to. Yeah, I think it's a lot of that, but I think just energy wise, I didn't want to have to prove and explain myself to them while I was still trying to perfect my craft. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm still trying to learn movie making. I'm not good at it. You know, I'm still futzing my way. And if I show, you know, it's like if I show you now, it just looks like, you know, it doesn't do anything. So I really, you know, Marshawn, remember that I'm just about that action boss, you know, that quote that he has. Like that was like
Yeah.
how I thought. And maybe that's that Asian thing. Like I even like I don't like talking about projects that aren't done yet. If it's not at a stage, like I can't really speak to it until like I just need to sit down and do it, or I just need to make the movie and do it. So I do have that kind of complex where it's like I feel like a lot of the energy of talking about it could be spent doing it. So maybe looking back, it was like I can imagine all the countless arguments, the countless you know, dinner table snide, whatever, you know, passive aggressive comments, you know, about me trying to do this, and all that energy is just would be too much when I'm trying to do my thing. So let me do my thing, improve
Right.
myself, and when I come to a point, so yeah, it's maybe it just kind of comes down to that. So I just have some marker of achievement, you know, these film festival acceptance, you know, in the big scheme of things. Maybe it doesn't necessarily mean anything to them, or you know, I didn't get paid, you know, film festivals, right? But it meant something to me. You know, I had something that I felt like I could stand on.
That's a huge lesson for young people coming up at any time. I mean, I wish I knew that, what you just said. I wish I was that wise. You know, I was like telling my parents,
Yeah,
like, I want to do this, I want to do that, and they're probably looking at you just going like, okay, sure, kid, do, you know, you're wasting
yeah,
time talking about this shit. But
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
yeah, it's shut the fuck up
Maybe
and
it's conflict avoidance. Yeah, but yeah. Well, yeah, there's that. Yeah. Maybe the conflict avoidance too. I just didn't want to, you know, I didn't want to deal with it.
yeah,
So
it's not efficient. It's not an efficient use of our time to kind of sit there and try to, what if you really are, this is what it sounds like. If you really are confident
mhm.
about what you have to set out to do, then you're just going to go and do it. But if you're not really confident, you're going to seek
Yeah,
approval, right? And I think that's what I
yep,
was going through
yep,
my whole life with my world. I just didn't know. I didn't know what I needed to do. And I think a lot of us are like that. A lot of young people
yep.
are not confident, you know, in their decision about, oh my God, to become a film director is like a major thing, right? And
Mhm,
so I think, you
mhm.
know, or to become an actor, a singer, or, you know, we're seeking approval. But the way you did it is like, no, I'm going to just do it and not have to even deal with the conflict. And
Yeah, yeah. It's and then, you know, I struggle when younger filmmakers ask me for, do you have advice and stuff like that. And I just have, it's just the hard, it's like you either have it or you don't. I hate to be so Darwinian about it. I'm just
Yeah.
like, anything I tell you, if I tell you you can't do it, you know, it doesn't mean anything. The point is, if you want to do it and you believe in
Yeah.
yourself, you're going to do it. It doesn't matter what I say or anybody else gives you anything. I can kind of give you tips and tricks to kind of get there. And maybe looking back is just kind of like, there's a practicality I have about filmmaking. I think definitely from Corey, kind of dovetailing back to Corey, it's like how influential he is. Like, you have to understand his background. He was a Peking opera, raised basically an orphan, or basically, you basically give your child away because you can't afford to raise them. So you give them as a servant to this opera school. And this is all he knows. So by the time he goes to 17, 18, he graduates from this academy. All he knows is stunts. All he knows is circus and opera performance. He goes into stunts because that's the only skill set that he has. He's a little bit more brighter than, say, the other stuntmen, so he ambitions to be a stunt coordinator and a fight choreography. Then he becomes a director, right? And this is all out of survivalship.
Yeah.
It wasn't because like us, we can sit back and like, I want to make movies. I love movies. Like you look at me and like, you are crazy about movies. I don't understand. Like, if I had any other skill set, I would do it. Like, movie making is too hard. Like, he would say straight up that to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to me, that was like, and that put me up my feet on the ground in a lot of ways, because it was in a way of just saying like, you know, just the bigger sense, like it's also a job that it's a business to do, not like a business like
Yeah.
make money, but business like it's something that it's not as romantic as
Yeah.
it needs to be, And so maybe that was all that grind and just respecting that grind of just what it took to do stuff.
Yeah, that sounds like it was just like a very practical, like, hey, this is not fantasy work here. This is some real
Yeah,
shit that you're gonna have to roll up your sleeves.
yeah,
So
100%.
so you make a few shorts and you tell your parents, but you still have to make money, right? Throughout the years that you have to make money to
Yeah,
survive, to make these projects. So what do you do? Do you stick with computer science, or you go
yeah.
all in filmmaking?
You saw my side hustles. It was all insurance fraud and yeah. Um, yeah, I never used any of my computer science skills, but I used my writing skills. So I used it to, I like worked in agency work. So I was working at like Amazon, writing product reviews and just writing consumer electronics product reviews. I was very still like focused back to, some skill set that I knew. I could talk about camcorders. I could talk about
Yeah.
electronics. So I parlayed that into that. So I got into agency ad work. In this town in Seattle, there's not a lot of film work. And that's kind of another thing. It's like if you want to get into film or as a writer director, you either can kind of start a PA and kind of work on a physical side up. But like,
Mhm.
I honestly was never interested. Like, I just had my own projects. Like, I never, I don't want to, have someone give me the green light to make, hire you on to direct that typical track. So I just had my own work that I wanted to make. So yeah, you do have to get side hustles. You have to work, and you
Yeah.
have to kind of like find some
What
other way to do it.
why didn't you move to LA?
That's a good question. I still ask myself. It's like that's I don't know. I always, when you go to LA, you got to figure out how to pay rent in a big way, and then you have to figure out how to go up that stream. So again, the typical LA track, if you don't have film school or have a contact, they can land you like, okay, you're gonna start as a PA and you work on the physical side, but you can get stuck being PA forever. You might be as a director's assistant, you might learn a little bit, but it just felt like that whole track wasn't interesting when I had scripts and ideas that I wanted to make now. So in a way, I didn't see LA as a way to validate. And it's like, does it help me make the thing I want to make? And that's the way I kind of looked at it. In Seattle, there's a tribe and you find people and that can work with you and do. And that's the tribe that I had, to this day to make the Paper Tigers. But before then, I was just going to keep doing it. And then like my friends or whatever, they're all in LA, and whenever they're ready to shoot, they come up to shoot. So it never felt like my access was disconnected. I'd go down, I'd be in LA, and I'd have all my friends working in the industry. So I know everybody there. So I didn't really see anything
Yeah.
that I needed to be there.
You know, when you sit in a theater and one of the first things that come up on the screen is persistence of vision. Can you explain that? Can you break that idea down and why it's on the screen there? I mean, I can get into
Yeah.
all this stuff. I want to hear it from you.
I thought it was a clever pun, Ken. Like I didn't realize it would become like an actual like life motto. It really did. Like, yeah, I don't know how to get out. Like, yeah, people mention that all the time. Like, damn, I should have just said like making movies quickly productions or something. It was saving me a lot of grief to figure that out. But I think it did start out, it was just a clever pun. Like persistent vision is how film works. You have 24 frames that are speeding through, and your brain basically connects these still images to think it's actually a movie. So it has that interesting dynamic. That's how movies work. So yeah, I just kind of use that as a production banner. It's still fun. But yeah.
It's brilliant, but it really represents who you are. You're really persistent. And here's where this is what I'm getting at too. It's your persistence is not only okay, like not moving to LA, that's persistence. Another major thing that I have a lot of respect for you is the idea of your script comes out, it goes, it makes the rounds, and people are saying big money's coming to you and saying, let's change out these people of color characters and let's do white, all Caucasian. That's persistence to me. Can you break down that sort of, where'd you get that from?
Yeah. Where'd I get persistence from, or where those meetings took me?
Where did you get the fortitude to stay persistent to keep your vision of the way you want to do things, especially when it came to Paper Tigers and keeping your characters the way you wanted them?
I guess I'm a stubborn SOB.
Yeah,
I don't know what it is. Yeah, I think going back to maybe I just, again, Corey, like how influential that is, because there was one thing with, he would give me a sense like that you're making movies for the world. Like it's one thing to kind of make these short films and do things for locally or even like Asian American, which I think at that time like was a lot of navel gazing. I think we all kind of like sat through a lot of short programs at these Asian American film festivals. Like, oh my God, like how many more like self-autobiographical stories do we need to see? And like, which is all good. Like I look back very fondly, but it was definitely a certain type of ill. Like everyone was making that type of thing. And I never, like, I just want to entertain and make movies for the world. And by consequence of that, it's going to be your name on the movie. And that was that lesson that was always imprinted. So if you're going to ship it out and like put your stamp on it and say, this is the movie I made, you better be able to stand by it. So maybe that was just that already ingrained in me, and knowing the movie that I was going to make, that you get these notes and you get these meetings. But ultimately, when the movie goes out, if it flops or fails, it's on, or succeeds, it's on you, on your name, which is fine. Like this is how you want it, right? I just want to kind of like, failure. I've been all, failure has been part of my life as well. So I don't care if we fail, but I want it to be my failure, and not because someone said like, do this, do that, and then suddenly, they have no ownership in that failure, and then you're on your own.
Right.
So there's that. Yeah. So I'm perfectly fine with, success or failure. It just needs to be mine. And I think that's where that kind of came from. So all those notes and all those things just honestly we didn't bat an eyelash about it. Never second thought around like moving on and finding the right partner. So like all this stuff, I know a lot of people are like, oh my God, that's great that you stuck to your gun. It was like, yeah, it was kind of obvious. Like I don't think we're the only ones. Like we all, like all of us Asian filmmakers who have spent any time in LA or the studios pitching have had these notes. We're not unusual. But I guess because we're in the forefront and it's out in the press and people are like, oh my God, like it's this thing's happening. It's like, can you believe police brutality? This is a thing, right? Like it's surprising to a lot of people that maybe we assume or we forget to realize that how little people are aware of this.
So when you are going through you're working at Amazon, you're doing all of these side hustles and you're working, you have a plethora of ideas, right? A plethora of story ideas, right? How do you know which one to really push forward with?
Yeah, I think it's an odd experience creatively, because sometimes you kind of know you have it, and sometimes you might have a part of an idea that you set aside, and if it keeps bugging or keep nagging you, and it's like, okay, maybe I need to pay attention to that. And maybe it's not that idea itself. It's like that first half an idea, like, or it's like that other character that you had in mind. Maybe that's the story. So there's a kind of craft and a creative process to kind of cultivating an idea. And maybe it's all oftentimes that we don't like to, how do I say it? It's like, I never completely put away an idea, even if it's an old idea. Like, you just kind of put it aside, and maybe it comes back to you and it changes form or something. But I also want to push forward and like find new ideas and just be hungry around that, and not have to kind of rely on, older ideas. I don't know if that answers the question, but
yeah, it does. And everything seems like it's timing too, right? Projects come up and timing.
There's a patience around that. There's definitely a patience that you have to around, is the audience ready for it? I've been looking back on this film, I never thought we would take 10 years to do it. I think, we'd get around to doing it much sooner and stuff like that. But everything, looking back, like, I hate to say it, but everything happened in its own time.
Yes.
And, it hit at a certain time. And even just now, this conversation about what's happening in the world with Stop Asian Hate, and like, it's not like I expected a pandemic or anything, but people are making those connections and talking points, which is like, oh, well, wow, it's like there's something different about that. But I think if you're also working, for me, I like, if you're working to make something that has weight and meaning, it will be timeless in and of itself. So almost any time that you drop it into the world will receive it.
Absolutely.
Or at least I think it. I think so. Yeah.
No, I think you're absolutely right. What inspired you to write this film?
Yeah. So this one was an idea. I think I was feeling burned out by film. Like I said, I started really early, making films, and so it's one thing to kind of do as a hobby, and then another thing to kind of like actually have an LLC, or have like figure out your career track, because and then figure out what all that means, and even peer friendships. And I've seen falling out, and good relationships having falling out over a movie, or just all this little sour stuff that I never I didn't sign up for that, right? I didn't think those are all things that I think were positive, life experiences.
Yeah.
So I was just feeling, burnt out about, the industry and just kind of the way things are done. Oh, it's just business, it's just show business or whatever. And I never felt like that, and then that's kind of going back to like, I'm practical about things, but it also, it is still an art, and we have to kind of respect what that is. So, anyways, it was just kind of like me tapping into, what are the things that I really loved about film in the first place? What are the things I loved about, martial arts, and just trying to find some type of common denominator in this film and story of trying to rekindling, these things that we had in our youth, but maybe moved away from, and whether they're still valuable to us.
So you had this idea for this story, and you write it, right? You put it on paper. How long did that process take you?
It was a long time, I think, because it was stretched over a period of years where I was working. So I was, my producer, Michael Velasquez, and I walked in with a one-page treatment at the LA Asian Pacific Film Festival. They had a kind of a pitch lab.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a one-page treatment, and everybody else, had full, complete scripts, like real professionals. Like, we're just sitting around here, just like, we had 15 minutes. It was 1 minute of pitching and just 14 minutes of just like talking about stuff. But like, that was Anderson Lay was just a huge champion, like, because he knew he believed in me or whatever. He's like, yeah, just send it in, we'll make it work. Because I was like, is this enough? I didn't feel like a page was like gonna get us through the whole day, but he was like, go for it. So just hearing the feedback and just hearing the things, like, already we kind of knew what we had, and we knew that this could be something. And so I just like kind of put more focus in terms of just actually focusing and writing on it. So I think I wrote a few drafts earlier on, and then I was working in Vietnam. So at that time, Corey Yuen was making this movie called Cho Lon, or Buddha Jalad, in Vietnam. And Ham had called me up. Ham Tran is another filmmaker who was editing Charlie's films up to then, but he had an opportunity where he was going to direct. So he calls me and says, hey, Charlie needs an editor. Are you up for it? And I was like, cool. Like, this sounds dope. And it was really interesting because also it was kind of flashing back to like, I don't consider myself like an editor, but because same experience with Ham and all of us, like we just learned all the facets of
Yeah.
filmmaking because we had to, right? Like we didn't have any. So, you know, whatever I can contribute to Charlie's film as an editor, like as I will, but I didn't like say like I want to be an editor, you
Right.
know, automatically. So I just came in to like help out friends and be a cool part of a cool project. Like at the end of the day, that's what it was. So I went to Vietnam to do that, and that's kind of like, you know, opened up some other opportunities as an editor. So I edited like Dustin Nguyen's Jackpot Jung Joel as well. And so, you know, I was kind of like ping ponging back and forth, Vietnam and the States. And then like I had the script that was like, oh, all in like pieces and fragments and different drafts. So like it was just it just wasn't there yet. But it was like it just needed me to sit down and focus. But so I had kind of like talked about it vaguely with some producers out in Vietnam about it already, because it was at a point where I could kind of like speak to it. So there was even interest then. They were like, "Oh, could you like set it in Vietnam and set it here?" And it felt like an easier move, like because you get financed it pretty easy and yada yada. So at that time they were looking for a lot of like new directors, and they still are, but Vic Liu directors, you know, Vietnamese expat Vietnamese was in hot demand, you know.
Yeah.
So it's like it felt like a, you know, low hanging fruit, but I always felt like the story was an Asian American story, or at least a North American immigrant story, because you're stuck between two cultures and you're getting pulled between kung fu, Asian Confucian culture, and soccer dad life, you know, and modern jobs and all that stuff. And so that to me was interesting about that. So again, maybe sticking to the guns, I just felt like it was a story that that I could do. So I went the harder route and just like decided to make in the US, which is like nobody does. And like it was just at that time, like, you know, all my friends, like everybody was like, go to Vietnam, you can get your feature made, you know. And you know, I saw everybody make their features and get it made. And it was like, yeah, you can get it made. But the story just always felt like I just couldn't set it.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine it being made in Vietnam.
Yeah, yeah.
Asian American story.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, so then yeah, at that time, you know, also like I said, I didn't see myself as an editor, but I was starting to be seen as an editor. So then obviously if you cut, you know, Charlie and Dustin's movies, you're like the editor. Like Ham was the go-to guy, right? And then Ham's directing. Now I'm like the guy, so I was getting called, you know, about it. And I was like, yeah, but I was like, I want to direct. And this is what I had always wanted to do. So it was kind of a way to kind of like cut ties a little bit and just kind of focus on, you know, presenting yourself as a writer director for this as your first feature, you know. So that was kind of a conscious decision to kind of like come back to the States, focus on writing, finish the script, and then somehow figure out a way to get it made.
Now, when you go out and you're like, okay, I finished this, right? And you go out to make the film, how did you not move to LA and use connects down here in LA to, I mean, how do you put together something, you know, it just blows my mind from where you are to have a script and go, you know, I'm going to make a movie and I'm going to find financing from wherever you are and not be in the epicenter of, you know, of the movie making world. How do you put it together?
I don't know. I think because primarily the core of our producers are from here, so it felt like an easier way to start, you know, get it up on its feet. So Alan Tuong and Yuji Okamoto are here based in Seattle. So we always had these meetings here, and Dan Kildark as well. We have one producer in LA, Michael Blasco, as I mentioned. So we could kind of have this remote squad, you know, and if Michael could take meetings in LA, he did. And if there was anything that needed to be done, I'd fly down or stuff like that. But it always felt like it was, you know, this is like pre-pandemic, like we always knew like you could do stuff remote. Like it never felt like it was a far cry to have to be effective and do things. But now we see like how obvious we could do stuff remotely. So we figured all out, you know, cloud sharing, all this. I mean, you found a way. But also the other thing with film financing, they're not always LA based, especially for kind of independent, kind of the under 10 million. They're usually like European or Canadian and stuff like that. So it just felt like, you know, it didn't really make sense to go to LA when you had all these, you know, potential producers and stakeholders that, you know, weren't even LA. And also keep in mind, you know, this whole film incentive structure where you could go to Canada and film. So even just where you can shoot is still agnostic around, you know, being LA centered. So it didn't, yeah, it just never came up as an issue. And if it did, we just kind of found a way, and we flew down, and like I said, Michael would take meetings if it really needed.
At some point, you decided to do crowdfunding. Was that a thought from the beginning, or is that something you all came up with much later?
Yeah, crowdfunding was much later. Crowdfunding came like out of necessity because we were just like getting nowhere fast and just hitting our heads against the wall. So all these studio meetings that you're mentioning, like we had pitched around, we had a sales agent, we went around and did the whole kind of pitch tour around all of LA studios, essentially. And then we get that constant note. Like it wasn't just one note. People were like, is it one offer? It's like we got a lot of offers. It's like everyone knew what we had, and maybe that was kind of a testament to at least the idea had some legs, but they didn't like the execution or the idea of the
Yeah.
casting. So that was honestly it was a little encouraging because at least they knew we had something. Otherwise we wouldn't be having this conversation. But it was a constant refrain about whitewashing, and it's like this tune is not going to change. It doesn't matter who we meet in LA, it's going to still be the same thing. So we just kind of like decided to pivot. It was 10 years of come to Jesus moments. Like it was literally like you have to like constantly reassess where you're at and constantly figure out like, is this working? If it's not working, you got to move. So that's why we went to crowdfunding. Like crowdfunding was honestly like it's not even the whole part of the budget.
Yeah.
Because what you're looking for is like ideally a studio that can fund or even augment, and that's where the offers came in. Because it's like initially we budgeted $1 million if we were on our own, but if a studio came in, they have to do unions and they have to do all those things. So it will be a higher budget film automatically. So the Kickstarter and crowdfunding is not significant enough to be able to raise the full amount of money. So we decided to do it just to be able to kind of get our foothold and like an awareness and all that thing. And then because of the Kickstarter, we were able to get private investors that weren't LA. They were all in Seattle, like real estate, doctors, dentists, and business people. And they rallied around. A lot of Vietnamese, Asian Americans got around and supported the film after the Kickstarter, after seeing the Kickstarter. So that was a way to open doors. We had no like A to Z plan. It's like we just had to do something to figure out like, to get some funding. So
it's crazy what you sort of start out thinking that, well, crowdfunding, we're trying to raise money, but it's not really in the crowdfunding money that you're raising the money. It's the marketing, it's all of the waves that happen as a result of creating that action of the crowdfunding.
Yeah. Well, it was still a significant amount. I mean, we raised 124,000. Originally, it was 110,000 goal, but we surpassed it. So we wanted to peg it at a significant amount that at least could help us, get to there where we needed to be, but also, make it wave, because a lot of Kickstarters tend to be maybe 30, 40. They're pretty, they're very practical like us, but like they put it, as post, but we had, no movie, right? Or we had some in the movie actually, and just kind of like, again, just to show how janky and how non-linear our film was. We had some money in place, some private money. So we decided to shoot the portion of the film. And if you see the film, it's the young portion, the 80s and 90s segment with the young actors. We shot that actually 2 years before the main shoot.
Wow.
And we had a little bit of the money. So we shot that and we shot them out, which is essentially meaning like you don't need them again for the rest of the movie. So we have that in can. So it was, again, just finding a way to kind of like make the movie happen into reality. And then we use that footage to Kickstarter, and we use that footage to pitch at Cannes. Like we were in this film incubators, at Cannes, and we were able to kind of pitch and find sales agents out of that. So it's like, whatever it took, it was all by hook or by crook at that point.
Wow. So you didn't, in the beginning, did you start out with that concept, the way you shot that opening sequence, that what because it obviously it's shot two different ways, right? When they were young and then when so did you start out thinking that that's the way you're going to do it,
like 10 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, or even
no, I thought we were just going to shoot in one go and like just like a normal movie, like a normal like sane movie would be made. But we were just hitting I can count this down to the years, like year 6 we were hitting that wall and just like going nowhere fast. And like, well, what's going to change again? What's going to change this thing? That whole thing, like what's the definition of insanity, is doing the same thing over and over again and not having results. So we were hitting that. there were no results. So like, it's not persistent of vision. It's like trying to figure out how to persistence of pivoting. It's what I like to say. It's just like,
Crazy.
it's just like you got to figure out what it is while still like keeping your eye on the ball and like
Yeah.
making the movie intact. So it was a high wire act to shoot parts of the film, not knowing what the rest, even the actors didn't even know. Like, is this going to be in the movie? Is this a short film? They're like, but I knew it was going to be a feature, and and then planting the seeds for footage that you shoot now 2 years later, not knowing what the other actors look like. It's a lot of balancing act.
Yeah. Huge. So can I ask you about some parts of the film without giving anything away?
Yeah.
There's some pretty heavy language in there, right?
Hmm.
How did you arrive at saying, okay, that's acceptable, like I'm gonna do that? Like, was there any pushback in your mind, or did you go out and ask for advice about some of that strong language?
Can you maybe are you talking about just the language that's used and kind of the different you okay, I think I get what you're saying.
It's let me we'll just say
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
the racial part,
Okay, yeah. I never felt any issue around that because it was also kind of speaking to where my experience was, because if we're talking about you know in Asian American cultures, hip hop culture and Black culture is very much intertwined, and sometimes it's a little too cozy for my comfort,
Yes.
but a lot of my friends seem to have no problems. So that was always funny. It was funny to me in that sense. So I was like, how do I address it? It could be an interesting way to kind of address and have that in this film, because it is kind of, it's a thing that like, yeah, it's a weird thing. You're just like, did I just hear?
Yeah, and literally I felt somebody kick me in the side of the face when I heard it. I was like,
Yeah.
it was just like,
Yeah.
and I was like, whoa, man, he went there. Yeah. You just don't see that often,
Yeah. Well, it's like it
if
maybe
ever.
can, if ever, exactly. Yeah. I don't know if there's other I'm sure there's something, but yeah, for us, it just reflected, again, the things that I saw and heard and things. So it's like, I'm not, the film doesn't condone it. Well, I don't
Yeah.
condone it,
Yeah.
but it is a thing, and we should address it and put it front and center and have it as a moment in the story. Um, and yeah, so there's I never felt no one ever had any pushback, or even as we were coming through, it was like they just want white actors. It's just like that was the only thing that they really wanted. Like everything else was fine, I guess. Though. Yeah.
That word is I have so many layers of mixed emotions with that word, because what we never get to discuss about, and I talk about it with Bao Win, we talk about it a lot. That okay, I get that there's these historical layers to that word, and I think that there's all of this pain and suffering associated with the word, but as it has evolved in the mainstream culture and the way it's used, sometimes it's sort of like this word that's cool the way they blacks
Oh
use,
yeah.
right?
Oh yeah.
We don't
We're
have
talking about the N word, so there's no
yes,
mystery. Like I'm not sure we're talking about the N word, so people are aware.
yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, dude.
We
Just the other night, we were out at a bar, and like these three guys were getting kind of like a little excited as you do at a bar, and they were not Black, but they were like, yo, oh, and they were just throwing it quite freely to each other. And they weren't white, but they were like Hispanic, and they were brown, in some sense. But that word was being used very freely to each other, and I was like, okay, yeah. So I mean, it's out in the world, like it exists and people use it. So yeah, it's
it's
a very
changed contextually, right? It's changed
yeah
like in a big way, but the roots of the word is, there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of suffering. But at the end of the day, like
yeah
we use it sometimes with the word when we say ninja, right? And I think that's
yeah
such a I'm so mixed about that word, because it's
yeah.
like it it's almost like where there's got to be, it's such
Oh yeah,
like there's
yeah.
no courage or no spine behind that word. But if you go in the other way and you really use the N word, then it's not acceptable as well. But we don't have that sort of, and I don't know if it exists in other languages, but that particular word that Americans share, and especially kids that grew up in the hood around, you know, the African American community, it's such a mixed word. And then, you know, to have the Asian kids use it in the film, it's, you know, it's something that I don't know if it's talked about a lot in. Have you seen people talk about it after the film?
I've seen some comments like the reviews and some, and there were some folks that did come up and talk about it. I think what I've seen is, as a whole, it might be also generational. And there's, I think, what would I say? I think I've noticed Asian Americans seem to have more issues with it, younger Asian Americans, and um, I don't know, is it that PC culture that's also kind of touching on, and like just kind of like, you know, there's kind of a sentiment where like, if we don't talk about an issue, it doesn't exist. Like it's like, but we should talk about it. Let's be real with each other. Let's bring it out in the open and debate and have this. And I think that's more healthy. But you know, just that people say like, oh, it just seems unnecessary. Like you shouldn't have it. It's like, what in the story, like the characters are saying it for a reason, because to me, these characters are reflections of the older folks. You know, they're reminding them of how much of a punk ass they were. And all that. So it's like that to me, it's a story point. I didn't just throw it out there just to like be provocative or anything. It's like, it's like I'm trying to tell something here. So there's that. And then like there are, you know, yeah, I think other people found the way it was presented to be fair, because it's not just like, it's not a one-liner, like there's an arc throughout that scene.
Absolutely.
That it does become a thing where even, you know, the actor, yeah, you know, Mikkel, you know, is using it, and then, you know, there's this other scene as well. So there's kind of a story arc that feels like it's treated fairly.
Warranted.
So I think that, yeah, so I think that people can kind of see that. So I think that's what we were going for as well. But yeah, it is a dance. Like to me, that was all the dance between that, but also the moods and tones and genre. Like we were all like just dancing on a needle, just trying to, you know, make sure it all works. And maybe it doesn't, and maybe it does, but like that we were aware of it and we were trying. So yeah,
it works for me. Works very well.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah,
very well for me. Yeah. Another thing that works very well for me is the meditation. Again, I don't think I'm giving away any spoilers, but for me, I look for themes in films, and you know, broadly speaking, meditation was a focus, right? Like this idea of, you know, if your life is messy, if it's all over the place, and you know, what I got from it is, hey, you know, what's important, figure out what's important, and take a step back or a few steps back, and grind it out so you can figure out what the focus is. And once you get that focus, and it just kind of felt that way throughout the film, was like finding your center. Do you have what, because for somebody to write that, for somebody to be able to direct that, for me, you kind of have to practice meditation to understand on that level without giving too much away. But that felt like the spine of the film for me. That's where I walked away going, wow, it resonated very well with me, this theme of meditation. So do you practice it? Is this something that you've been engaged with for a lot of your life?
Yeah, well, a lot of the martial arts kind of training is, number one, physical, but it does have kind of your mental and spiritual kind of aspects as well. So meditation is kind of a major component in martial arts. Meditation is a major part in martial arts, and it seems to be a bit different from what I've seen from some you know, even just spiritual or religious type of meditation, because I think it's a little different. It's basically kind of like going up the same mountain, if you will, but it is kind of like there's different. So it's, I guess what I was saying is, it's interesting for me. You try to find this oasis even in the midst of chaos. So it's especially with filmmaking, it's just so very busy, right? You don't really have, you know, that quiet time. You can't really set apart, which is fine. You know, people do. Some people do. I think, isn't David Lynch really into like transcendental, you know, meditation? So he's rich and he's fine. He has time. So but for us hustlers, man, you and I, we don't have time for this. But yeah, so I was found like martial arts interesting because it was meditation and movement versus like sitting and just like,
Yeah.
being at Zen piece or Tai Chi or all those like Chinese Tai Chi, Bagua, and Qi. Like these are kind of meditation and movements and really focus on how you can embrace your world changing and you're moving and your whole perspective is changing and how to meditate within that in that movement. So I found that really compelling and that was really helpful to kind of give me the sense of it's not just like being at zeroing out your thoughts and pushing everything away, but it's really embracing everything that's around you and being at peace with that. Do you know what I mean? So it's like some people think of some people as meditation, it's like just clear your head and like serenity now, like that type of like thing. But it's like I think there's some maxim where it's like, if a thought comes in, don't push it away, like just see it and welcome it and like let it go, like just like someone walking by, just and if a thought another caught up, so you don't get upset over distractions, you actually kind of let it all kind of flow and become part of that flow state or whatever. So yeah, I think that's a huge part for this character Danny, because he has just so many conflicting loyalties and these things that are happening kind of back and forth. And for him, his challenge is to be able to kind of, can he accept us all into harmony state and be able to kind of like be his best self when he's able to kind of put that all together. And that was a challenging thing because even the way it's written is like Danny is, to me, like, the whole thing of like code switching, that like
absolutely.
I think, right, we behave certain circles because of our contacts and all. So him at home, he's kind of the dad, but he's flaky because he can. And sorry, Paul, am I in? Yeah, so if like our character Danny, he kind of comes at this thing where code switches, and he's a dad, but he's also can get away with it because this kid can't push back, right? So he can kind of like do the things that he needs to do to get his agenda in. But when he meets martial arts brothers, he can't BS them. He cannot escape, because they know him too well in that sense, right? And same with his wife, he can kind of play his games and kind of like do all these things, but in front of his brothers, there's no. He's also the older brother, the dicey. So now he's that leader, whereas before he was more of a follower, avoider. So now it's like has that interesting kind of like thing. So to me, it's like these two energies that are kind of coming together eventually to kind of come. So that's the challenge of the third act, to try to bring it all together. And I'll tell you, like Danny, or Elaine, the actor, really hard to understand where the character was going, because usually actors want to kind of map out, where they are in the story and find that arc. But the best way I could tell him was like, this guy's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Like it's never clean. Like he's like, he's like,
that's what you feel, with this character.
Yeah, and I think that's what it is, because it is a thing where like only when you're like forced, kicking and screaming to like actually into action, then you have to do something. And that's the interesting thing. Sometimes I think about, do we really do things because we want to or because we have to? Like, and I think that's an interesting dynamic. Sometimes when we do things because we have to, it gets us through the other side. And maybe that's a very Asian way of thinking, or Asian American thing of thinking, because I think people get caught up like, I only do it because I believe in it. I want to do something. Like, no, sometimes you got to go mow the lawn. Sometimes you got to go like fix the toilet. You don't want to do it, but you're going to do it, right? So that's the action and intention. Yeah.
It's a really good point. I mean, I think in the arts, for me, like 80% of the work we do is things that you don't want to do.
100%.
100% might be the fun part. Not even 15. I think 5%. Yeah. The hatching of the idea and sitting and bullshitting about the idea is the fun part, right?
But oh yeah.
When you got to like roll up your sleeves to go get the funding, or you have to sit and write, or you have to turn the camera on to actually do the work, it's a grind. It's a true grind.
Yep.
And
I think back to our families are just kind of like that. Like it's a huge thing to have, like my dad, who had a career, he was a teacher, and then like to end up ripping away from your country and resetting essentially and doing something maybe you don't want to do. I'm sure he didn't want to be an office worker, but he had to for his family, so, but that wasn't what he had prepared basically, 35 years of his life to do. Right. So it's like, so I'm very conscious. I don't like to talk about movies. It's like my dream. I want to always want to do this. Like it's like it just feels a little like maybe that's an Asian guilt coming in. Like I don't like this. It's like I just feel like I have a it's a craft and it's a calling, you know, to be a storyteller. And I take that seriously in that sense.
What other genres are you sort of gonna, I mean, do you find yourself sticking with this sort of genre for a while, or do you have other stories, genres that you want to explore?
Are we talking about kung fu as a genre or the kind of the approach, I guess?
A kung fu as a genre.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've said what I needed to say about kung fu with the film. I wouldn't close the door. I know a lot of people are interested, kind of see what's next, but yeah, I would have other stories that are interesting. But I think in the same vein, kind of like I don't really like straightforward dramas. I don't really like straightforward comedy. So I think the general sense is like it would be, you know, kind of the way that would be an honest way I see the world, and it might be funny and it might be dramatic, but yeah, that's the way I kind of see the next idea then.
But you're not going to go out and make a romantic comedy or, you know, some, you know, movies, a chick flick, like things that I like to
Yeah,
watch.
if it's a studio film for you, yeah, totally. My phone is not ringing. It's the yeah, then yeah, let's make it happen.
um,
Yeah, to me it's the story. Like to me it's like you know, Billy Wilder's like my movie god, like just the ability that he could do with film noir, romantic
yeah.
comedies, you know, satirical, you know, war movies and uh thrillers. Like you just that's to me as a storyteller. Like you're not, you know, use no form as form, like not have all any of these things and just kind of do you do you. And if a story interests you and I hope we're at a better state. I think before we were really into typecasting, you know, filmmakers, you
Yeah.
know, stay in this lane or stay in that lane. So I can see things hopefully changing, or at least, you know, people are at least more willing to have entertain other stories from filmmakers, because I think we all feel pretty open about
Yeah.
it.
What about Vietnam? You ever going to go back and work there for a while or live there?
Yeah, Vietnam's always exciting. I mean, like I think it was only because I felt the story was an Asian American story that it kind of like took my attention. So I mean, if there's a project that I have to do in Vietnam, definitely an option. I mean, it's so energetic. Like there's if you anyway, it's such a word. Anyone that's been out there, maybe it'd be hard to kind of explain to anyone who hasn't been out there. But it has such an exuberance and energy, and like can do it, can do it tentativeness. That's just really fresh, and they're almost like, you know, it's just such a the young generation is just so like um they just see so much opportunity ahead of them. And I'm like, oh, what's that like? And it's just really cool to see young people have hope and want to do things and tell stories. And if not for like censorship, the movies could be so much better, and because the talent is all there. So as an environment, it's really interesting. So yeah, the stories that I would have, you know, could definitely be around that. I don't have anything, but you know, it was definitely on the table. It's always there for me.
Yeah, that's good to hear. It's good to hear. I'd love to be there forever and you know, live there and breathe the air there and be a part of
Oh
the
yeah,
fabric of society there. You know,
oh
that's
yeah.
my dream. Always been. What's next for you?
Well, it's hard. Yeah, we're birthing this movie. I mean, we were just released here at we had opening weekend, and for an indie film, you know, it's just still go go go. It's not like you can't just kind of let it be out in the wild like that. You still have to kind of promote it, nurture it. We had a whole weekend of our premiere screenings in person. This is like the first time we've been able to see this
Yeah.
movie with an audience. You know, we've had a whole virtual film festival tour, and we were you know, at home and just virtually. So this we're cramming all of our like travel and the fun that we have from film festivals into, like, you know, these few weeks here that we have in our theatrical run. So it's just been promoting that. I would like to sit down and kind of like cone of silence and start to write and think about next project. I have kind of like batting around a few ideas right now, but it's like it's a little hard to say, you know, exactly what it like. Again, it's not fully formed yet for me to speak to, but um, yeah, I got some. I hope this movie does well, so I have some leverage, so that we don't have to spend another 10 years making it.
Yeah, where can people catch it?
Well, they can catch it in theaters nationwide or on VOD. So we had a whole wide release on all the platforms. So you can go to www.thepapertigersmovie.com. You can find all the information on going to theaters or seeing it online. I gotta say, the theater experience cannot be beat. I think for all of
Yeah,
us,
for sure.
that's the why we made the movie and had that obviously pandemic at times disclaimer, do what's safe and do whatever you think you're comfortable with, but you can rent private rooms, private movie theaters, for your squad or your people, so there's options for that too. But the theater on the big screen and the sound with people, like it can't be beat. Like I think that's where this movie kind of shines best
Yeah.
as far as like that experience.
Ling O and Bao Win always have these two. They always there's they always have this inside joke because Lee watched some Nolan film on the little back of the airplane screen, and
Yeah.
it just drives Bao crazy. And I'm like, this is not that movie to do that. So just shout out to Lee and to Bao.
Hey.
Paper Tigers is not a movie to watch on the airplane. Lee.
Yeah, yeah, Lee. No, but still though, buy it or rent it however you want. Like we're not stopping you, but you can do all of it. Hey, what's stopping you from doing it all? But yeah, the theater experience is special, and I think it's really fun because I think hopefully our country is getting back on its feet and gradually kind of getting space. But that's some of the sentiments that I've heard from people. It's like this is the best movie to watch coming out of
Absolutely.
lockdown and coming out of the pandemic. It's just like that type of thing. And again, that's an example of the movie kind of like being out in the world, and now it's the people's. Like it was my movie 10 years, but now
Yeah.
it's everybody. So I never imagined a pandemic release. I never imagined this type of Stop Asian Hate in the midst of all this stuff. So but now it's become this other thing. So I'm so happy to kind of see it start walking on its own and going to school and getting a job. And it's just I love this. I love seeing this movie being its own person. So
I had a wonderful time. The action sequences were natural and they felt right.
right on.
It wasn't some crazy ass like things that you can't believe. These are things that you felt like. I watch a lot of MMA, so it just feels like it was just the right amount where you could feel the story moving along and having this action, and it just feels very organic to watch this sort of the style of martial arts that you did. It feels very good. It felt very, again, natural and organic the way you did it.
Cool. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I mean that's what we always kind of go for. It's like when I think maybe out of form and function, we couldn't afford wire work or anything. It's like that was always off the table. But we also kind of knew intentionally, what is dad foo? What is that? What does that look like? What does it mean to be out of shape and like
Yeah.
lose a few steps? So we always call it like Shaw Brothers in a street fight. So
Mhm.
you did have kind of kung fu flavor, but you still are losing your footing, you're slipping, you're falling, and so
Yeah.
it's kind of a new territory for us creatively too, which was to me interesting. Working with our action director, Ken Kittigwa, is just that whole deconstruction because action films and especially Hong Kong film, we know just the beauty and the
Yeah.
aesthetics, the perfection of it all is part of our training because Corey, like I kind of grew up in that school of training, right? But now how to undo that or go away from that or kind of
Yes.
like uh dirty it up, a
So
little bit.
that's what I was feeling. I just didn't know how to explain it. The
Cool.
dirtying it
Yeah.
up of it. That's
Yeah.
what made it feel organic. That these old fuckers were trying to do some shit and they couldn't do it. That's what it was.
Yeah.
That's what felt so organic. Thank you for explaining that and getting it.
Yeah.
No wonder I'm like just sitting here trying to figure out why did it feel so natural, because you're seeing these old guys trying to like they're stumbling around, but the deconstruction of it, the making it seem like it's part of an old man's body, and it it worked really really well. So yeah, I didn't think about that, but that's a
Yeah. We def
magic of what you do.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely about trying to tell that story. Like, I always feel like, if you're taken out when, suddenly this wire work comes in when the movie or the universe isn't established yet, in a wuxia, Crouching Tiger, it makes sense,
Yeah.
but suddenly you'll see a fight scene, where the characters haven't done that yet. It doesn't feel right. So you always want to put that glove in hand type of design around action. Action design is just like production design. It's just like cinematography. Like you have to like be at service of the story. So that's kind of like some things that we were very intent on doing, but also it was an unknown territory, right? You know, no one had really done this before. So are we doing it right? I don't know, but we had to kind of check ourselves and deconstruct our own skills and craft. You know, it's like, hold on, like sometimes we would take a take that wasn't the best take, you know, that was like a little off. The kick was a little, you know, not the perfect, beautiful angle, but that was the better take for the story. So we would use that. And then like even the actors, you know, like just trying to like get them. Ron, you know, Ron Yuan, who plays Hing, you know, he gained weight for the role, you know, and he, out of everybody, of the Tigers, is the most experienced martial artist. And you know, even him gaining weight in the span of like 6 weeks for the role, like it changed the way he moved. It changed the way he could kick, and even he could feel like not being able to kick as fast as he could. So it definitely informed that performance, you know.
You know, one last thing detailed about the film, and the white headbands. That is not a kung fu martial arts thing. That's, I think, I don't know, this is my perspective, that's a Vietnamese thing, isn't it?
Yeah, or like Asian American, Chinese, Vietnamese, that kind of like Sino Viet culture thing. Yeah.
You know, wearing the
well, yeah, kung fu culture also kind of takes up on a lot of, you know, that as well.
Yeah, is that so did you take that out of the sort of like, you know, full traditions of the Vietnam? I guess I'm asking just to clarify, because I feel like that's more like a Vietnamese thing, or is it a shared thing, a shared tradition in across, you know, the funeral tradition as well as the martial arts tradition in Chinese culture? I wanted to know.
Yeah, it's all of the above. I think it's also, this is kind of where we are as an Asian American, because I love the scene, because when Danny and Hing come, like they don't really know their place. And I think we know that experience when we kind of like, there's this whole ritual and you're like, I don't know the rules. Like, what am I doing? Like, and the parents and the aunties and the uncles are like, you gotta do this. You know, like everything's like, and it's like, okay, but what's the rule? Like, no one really like wrote a manual. And even older folks, you know, even like some of them need to be coached by the grand folks about what the thing is. So like when I look at it, it's funny to me because like nobody knows what everybody says, like don't do this because it's not auspicious or whatever. Like, yeah, I just feel like it's just random rule at a certain point. But so I felt freedom in that, where you could kind of construct, because even among kung fu funerals, it's different. A Taiwanese kung fu funeral is different from a Hong Kong kung fu funeral, and yada yada. Even the styles between clans, between like, so there was no kind of rule set. And kind of jumping over to the other side about kung fu, like kung fu is like, you know, a broad term, because there's so many styles of kung fu. It's really, you know, Chinese martial arts is probably the more specific, a better way of saying it. But essentially, if it's a martial art practice in China or China's diaspora, that's kung fu. And so we knew a lot of masters would watch and like take apart, like, what, this is not pure kung fu. Like the whole thing of like, how many kung fu masters does it take to change a light bulb, right? It's like, you know, one, but 99 would say, no, that's not how we do it, right? So it's all, that's like the same thing here, like in funeral traditions, like it could vary from region to region. So I never felt like we had to kind of like get it really specific, but as long as it felt like it was something, then then that's the universality of it. But it was more about like feeling out of place and stuff like that.
Got it. Yeah, it fit.
But the white cloth is a pretty common element through, you know, whether it's a Chinese or Vietnamese funeral and stuff like that.
Got it.
But it's funny you mentioned. Yeah, I was just mentioning to my white producer. We have one token white guy producer, because we need him to like go talk to the cops while we're shooting, and so he's that guy for us. But I was just, he's seen the movie, you know, 1,000 times now, and I just asked him like a couple days ago. It's like, does that mean anything to you? Like when you see the white cloth, or it's like, well, you know, and for folks who have seen it, it's like he feels like it's a faux pas or like something is wrong, but he doesn't really know that. But I think for Asian people who see that, it's like it hits differently, right?
Yeah, when we were kids, we were not allowed to wear white cloths. You know, Rambo, we watched the movie, but it was red headband. We had white headbands laying around as sheets, and we'd cut them up and we get our ass beat for putting, you know, for putting those on, because that was like bad luck, that you could die in essence. That, you know, that's not something you culturally you were not allowed to do. It was huge for us.
So that's kind of like where we were weaving, not only as a genre of film, as all these genres, but also like who's our audience and who's that centered storytelling and audience for? Because a lot of the Chinese and stuff, we don't put subtitles on, right? We don't explain. And there's Vietnamese, and I didn't want to put any subtitles when there's characters speaking Vietnamese, because it's like, number one, it's like I'm trying to create this certain world where it's like, kind of reflects a lot of us. Like, I hang out with all my Asian friends and they'll talk on their phone. Like, I don't know what they're saying, but they're just talking freely. So I want to have that kind of experience where we don't have complete access to each other just yet, or at that moment. But even that idea of story, the white cloth or what, it's like, if it's white people, how much do we have to explain that or handhold essentially and point that? But if it's an Asian audience that kind of gets it, like, we don't need to, we can get on with it. You know what I mean? So I think there's also kind of like that perspective that is, part of our decision and how we tell the story, that we were kind of aware of how to do that, and those choices are conscious.
Yeah. One of my favorite characters was Carter.
Yeah.
My wife and I
a lot of people's favorite character.
We love that character. It was just like, God, you run into that sort of person all the time. My wife was in Chinese medicine school here in LA for a few years, and there were so many types that she identified with that character so much. She was so attached to that character, and we had every time he'd come on, we'd like it would, and it made me. I wanted to ask you: is he a comedic actor or is he a martial artist? I mean, he played both of them very well, right? He's like perfectly casted for that role.
Yes, he was perfect. So Matthew Page is the actor for that, and he has like a sketch YouTube show, which is super funny. It's called Enter the Dojo. He does play like this pretentious white kung fu or karate master,
all makes sense,
but it's a bit of a different take. It's almost like that fist foot way, and kind of like, it's super funny. It's hilarious. It's very high energy and stuff like that. But he we saw a sketch and we just loved it, and we saw big fans of the show, so we just reached out. That was an easy cast. Like, it's like, this guy got to play this character. So, and he also is, thank you. He's also a working actor, so he does like go out. He's out of New Mexico, so he does do shows as regular parts, and working actor. So it was just great. He had the martial arts chops, he had the acting chops, and the comic chops. So it's like, it just all worked out. Kind of have him be part of that movie.
It's like born to play that specific character. He just
the
comedic, his comedic rhythm was just like spot on. Spot on.
Yeah, him and Ron were going at it. It was hilarious. I mean, it was just like all the like alt takes. We have tons of alt takes for that, and they were just like spinning gold. But yeah, it's funny because we go back to the whole whitewashing, and we have studios that want to change it. But it's like, you have one great white character. It's like, do you really want them all? Like, that was to me, like, did you even read the script? Because we have one great white character,
right,
and it's a really compelling character in the screen, and he does stuff, and that was kind of like an interesting, mind-boggling moment, really, to have that confusion, or to want all the parts.
I'll end with this. I can see the level of detail and the attention to detail that you have through the casting, the writing, the way you shoot this. It's very well made, and I'm impressed, and I'm very proud of the work that you've done. From a member of the community, I applaud the film, and I hope everybody gets to go out and watch it at one point or another in the next year, because it's going to be out there in VOD. And thank you so much for actually having the persistence of vision to really finish it. And thank you, for putting it out there in the world for all of us to consume and enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, those are wonderful words. Like I said, like, now the movie is in its own stage of being on its own. So I'm just really excited to kind of see how it's received and be out there, because we've spent 10 years in the lab talking about it amongst ourselves, but it's a whole nother thing to kind of open it up, and so I'm just thrilled and over the moon to see the whole audience reaction. So we're just excited to share it with everyone.
Yeah. And I'm grateful for the time that you've spent with me today too, as well. Thank you so much, Bao. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks, man.
Wonderful. We'll talk soon. Thank you again.
All right.
Thank you for listening to The Vietnamese with Kenneth Nguyen. The Vietnamese is produced by Brittany Tran and Javier Proenza. Special thanks to Jane Nguyen, Catherine Nguyen, Tina Pham, Sydney Jamie, and Christo Trin. Please find us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at The Vietnamese Podcast. You can also find us on YouTube, where you can subscribe, like, and comment. Please rate and give us a review wherever you find our podcasts. Thanks again for listening.